So you see here the rainbow snake is symbolised by the rainbow, which betokens water and rain, if you're lucky. And in the deserts of Australia, that's incredibly important. And therefore was revered, the rainbow. And then from that, the primal imagination created this idea of a rainbow snake, which symbolised fertility and love and is the creator deity. If you want, the father. And I've been thinking a lot about fathers because of my mourning for my daughter and thinking, I was a terrible father. I didn't protect her. I didn't save her in time. I didn't reach out strongly enough. And I was thinking how difficult it is to be a father sometimes. We're not given much positive help or reinforcement by society. And so I'm thinking, and this is just a little newsflash, I'm thinking of founding something called Fathers for Peace. And I want Muslims, Jews, Christians, everyone in the Middle East to join this. Because if we fathers got together, and in Aboriginal culture in Australia and everywhere, fatherhood is a universal thing. And Rainbow Snake is the father of us all. And wants all the children to flourish. And that's why he sends rain. Thank God we're having rain here in the village intermittently after weeks and weeks of scorching hot weather. Rainbow snakes come back. And so, thank God. So I want to, it's an appeal, any fathers out there that want to help me, let's create a thing called Fathers for Peace. And it's open to people of all religions, colours, creeds, nations, because as a father I cannot bear the thought of somebody having killed my daughter. It just keeps me awake at night, weeping, whether it was by negligence or ignorance or deliberate deed, still working with the police on that. But I can't bear the thought of people killing children generally. In the IDF that are bombing Gaza at the moment, there are fathers doing that. How can they be killing other people's children? How did Hamas go and break out on October the 7th thinking that that's what God wanted? No, I think fathers of the world should come together and say enough is enough killing. And the same with Russia and Ukraine. I believe Putin is a father.
Apparently he is.
He doesn't really, I think he's a father in several respects. I believe Trump is. And, we should be responsible as fathers and work to save and protect our children and everybody. The King of Water, therefore, stands for flexibility, fertility, the gift of diplomacy. This is something only the truly great kings of history have, how to balance firmness with flexibility, justice with compassion, and wisdom with kindness. Rainbow Snake can teach us this because, as the consummate diplomat, he's always trying to marry up the elements and make a glorious show of their union, fire and water, earth and air, light and energy. In fact, he is hiding in everything, in every photon, every star, every point of light, within the eye of your beloved, as you gaze at each other from a place of truth. Behind all of these, the rainbow snake is the great diplomat, weaving for you a threaded conversation that can unite earth and sky, water and fire, as one. So that's the King of Water. Cool card to get at this time. And it's interesting, Australia is also going to recognise Palestine. So the King of Water is hopefully going to join the flotilla of the Solomon option and insist that we have wisdom instead of ignorance and fear to sort out the problems. They sent a flotilla over to Gallipoli in World War I. They need to go and help sort out Gaza, in my opinion. So, what's not to love about Rainbow Snake? Okay, let's do the goddess to balance. So we've had the male god. I'm going to ask if you want to shuffle them up, and I'll choose one. Right. Okay, let's have this one. Oh, well, there we are. That's quite good. Joan of Arc. Very important here in France. Jeanne d'Arc, the warrior of light. She's in her armour, holding a banner, and there's a light above her head.
It's a rainbow.
It is a kind of rainbow. It's funny that she should turn up today, because talking about flotillas going to help Gaza and things. I was just in the church earlier today, in Little Petite, where we did a ceremony for Sophie when we heard she died. We did a memorial in the village for her. And I was there doing some prayers earlier today, and I noticed the statue of Jeanne d'Arc in the church, which is in most French churches, particularly little rural ones. But most French churches have a statue of Joan of Arc. Why? English people don't really understand this. I studied it and learned. She was an amazing woman, actually, a young woman, who was contacted by certain angels as she was an early teenager living in northeast France at a time when the English were ravaging all over northern and western France. We were pretty fearsome and using not very nice tactics. We were like burning villages, raping, slaughtering people, mass killing, doing war crimes all over France. And Jeanne was just a little peasant girl who was told by these angels to stop it. Psychologists can study this and try and understand, but she had a conscience, and it crystallized in these angelic voices. And she was born in 1412, and it was at the age of 13 she had this vision. And then she would hear these angels, one of whom was St. Catherine, she believed, and another was the Archangel Michael. And she was haunted by these visions, and she was told that she had to lead the fight back by the French. And she was just a young peasant girl, how could she do that? But she managed to persuade her local priest, who persuaded the local bishop, who took it to the local commander of the king's forces. And eventually she had an audience at the age of about 15 with the King of France in his capital, Reims, I think it was. And he played a trick because he knew that this was a peasant girl who's been told by God to save France. He thought, well, if she's going to do that, she'll be able to tell if I'm really the king or not. So he dressed as a courtier in the great hall, and he sat someone else on the throne to pretend to be the king. And Jeanne walked into the hall, and she knew immediately, no, that's not the king. And she found him in the group. And this was the test he'd set for her, and she passed it. That was to prove that she was genuine, like a seer. And it's, extraordinary. I mean, what were these voices, these visions? Somehow they were guiding her to the real king, and they became good friends. The king trusted her. Said, what do you want? She said, I just want to, I just need your army, and I need a suit of armour, please. And he had made for her a suit of white metal armour that glistened, and I think it's in the card here. And she led the French army in a series of combats which defeated the English, first time for decades, and captured Orleans, which was the sort of centre of a lot of this fighting in the Loire Valley. And the English were defeated. She herself was wounded in that battle, and she would join the armies and lead them. Although she had no real warrior training, she was there like as a symbol. And that was the beginning of the French fight back. They decided the English could be defeated, and that the evil that they were doing in France wasn't to be tolerated. They were like I don't know, imagine the worst kind of English lager louts that go on holiday and get drunk and just misbehave and beat up people and trash nightclubs and etc., etc. I mean, they were like that in the medieval times. And the French were more sophisticated and they were more spiritual, if you want. They were more cultured. And they didn't respect the English conquering their land. And Jeanne represented that fight back. So, and she won. So what does this represent? Why are we getting this in our card? I think it's about moral courage. I think the good people of the world have to come together. She was declared later the patron saint of France, in fact, Jeanne d'Arc. And that's why in all the churches here in my little village we have her statue. The English captured her, and it has a sad ending. They captured her and they tried her for being a witch. And they burned her at the stake in Rouen as a witch. Now, all good people would say that that was wrong. That was just typical heresy hunting, medieval cruelty. And, that was a despicable thing to have done. And that she wasn't a witch in a negative sense. She was a seer, a good witch, if you want, a white witch, working with the forces of light to bring about human betterment and peace, ultimately. But sometimes to get peace, you do actually have to face down evil and defeat it militarily. The Druids, we slightly part from Gandhian absolute pacifism because the Druids were realists and they personally were pacifists, but they said sometimes you have to send in the warriors. Maybe Gaza is one of those times. Maybe the responsibility to protect should overrule the responsibility to stay at home and do nothing. Discuss. So anyway, thank you for that card from Sophie's pack, actually. Sophie was a bit of a Jeanne d'Arc, although she was just coming into her power, and has been sadly taken from us too soon. So that's my reading. What would you see in those two cards?
Interesting coincidence.
That's synchronicity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I like the rainbow snake and I like the Joan of Arc as well. So it's
they're a cool couple of cards to have got today.
couple of good dudes.
Yes, that's good. Right, well, we'll finish. I'll just read one quote from a book Sophie loved, which I've inherited from her, called When Women Were Birds. And one of her poems is inspired by this book, which she adored. And it's like poetic prose. Its subtitle is 54 Variations on Voice by Terry Tempest Williams. And it's about womanhood, it's about motherhood, it's about all kinds of magic. It's a profound study. Let me just read one excerpt from the book. What a woman never forgets is when she allows a man to make love to her. She enters a pact with angels that should a child be conceived in that moment, she holds the life of another. A man can come and go. He pulls out and walks away. But a woman stays and remains tender. She wants to be held. She wants to talk. She wants to revisit that motion made inside her, because in the love-making, a woman is remade. Because until she bleeds, she knows that man is the father of her child, whether she ever tells him or not. Because until she bleeds, her body has been rearranged through his ecstasy and hers, which will now become theirs. Because until she bleeds, repeated again, she will check her womb every day for the stirrings of life. Because until she bleeds, she wonders if her life will be 1 or 2 or 3. Repeat and repeat. Because until she bleeds, she imagines every possibility, from pleasure to pain, to birth to death, and how she will do what she needs to do. And until she bleeds, she will worry endlessly until she bleeds. Milk and blood live together. Now that's a powerful bit of writing. This is an amazing author. It's poetic prose about the struggles of womanhood and life, and that voice, I think, is very important, and I think that's why Sophie loved and honoured this book. She was just coming into her own womanhood. I think Sophie wanted to be a mother, to have that experience and that joy, and yet tragically it's been taken from her. So When Women Were Birds, I strongly recommend this amazing book of poetic prose. And we'll finish there.